get older. Unfortunately, what I didn't realize, and what was growing in that big belly there, was a tumor the size of a grapefruit. And so that was removed, and they said, Derek, you've got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So you can see here in November of 2003, I'm starting to look a little weaker. This is my nephew Kevin, and I at this point, I still didn't know what was going on. So I went through chemotherapy through 2003 to 2004. I went through 5 months of it. I went through, once they removed the tumor from my stomach, I had to go through physical rehabilitation because they had severed all of my abdominals. And it was an interesting experience. They got me strong enough. Once my stomach healed, they got me strong enough to go through chemotherapy. And I go into my oncologist's office, and he says, "So Derek, you're going to have your first day of chemo. Do you understand what that means?" And I said, "Well, I've got a pretty good idea. Well, why don't you give me just a quick overview?" And he's like, "Okay, well, Derek, picture an airplane flying through the sky." I said, "Okay." He said, "Now picture that airplane is on fire. That's the cancer. And what we're going to do with chemotherapy is we're going to put your plane in a medically controlled nosedive. And hopefully through the sheer velocity of hurtling this plane towards the earth, we're going to put put out all the flames on your plane." I said, "Okay, wow." He said, "And hopefully, my job there as your oncologist is to be the pilot of that plane and to know when to pull back on the stick before you crash into the earth. And hopefully, we'll get you down as far as we can take you. We'll pull you back up. We'll put you back up to a cruising altitude. And hopefully all the flames will be out and all your cancer will be gone. And if not, we'll dust you off and we'll do it again." And that's what my cancer experience was like. And while they were giving me chemo, they said there was one drug in particular that there's like a 2% chance of damaging your heart. But we will. The likelihood of that happening is not very high, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Unfortunately, I was part of that 2%, and 3 months post chemotherapy, I was walking up a hill and realized that I was out of breath, and I was having labored breathing. And I went into the ER several times. First, they thought it was pneumonia, but ultimately realized that it was dilated cardiomyopathy, that my heart function, my ejection fraction, I'm sure a lot of you know the term, but EF, the rate at which your heart pumps oxygenated blood through your body, everyone has one, it's around 55 to 65% normally. Mine was at 18%, and obviously to get on a transplant list, I was told was 17%. And hoping that with medications, good diet, exercise, we'd be able to get that back up to maybe 35, 40%, and live, not a life that I had expected to be living, but a life. And we would manage that condition for as long as we could. And I lived that way for 7 years. And so here I was in December 2008. It was, I don't know that this is the right date, but actually what happened was basically, I started going through cardiac rehab, and a year after I was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy, I was given a pacemaker, defibrillator, to keep me going. There was hope that between the pacemaker, defibrillator, and the meds, that things would be okay. And really, I told people that it was like being in the 12th round of a title fight of boxing. That, and I was getting my butt whooped because I would walk around and be okay, but every now and again it would be like I got my bell rung and I was knocked out and on my feet and just didn't know that I was knocked out yet. My hands would get heavy, my head would get heavy, I'd get extremely dizzy, and I'd just have to sit down. And that was the beginning of the 7 years. By the end of the 7 years, that progressed. It got worse and worse and worse until the majority of my days were just that. I was propped up in a hospital bed because I couldn't lie down, because if I did, my lungs would fill up with fluid, and I wouldn't be able to breathe. I was out of it more than I was aware of what was going on. I no longer had the strength to lift my head, my arms, and my friends would just, I was treated at Penn, so my friends would come and sit by my bedside, and I wouldn't be able to tell that they were there, and they would hold my hand and they would cry. And that was basically the extent of it. And here you see just some pictures to show you. I was, here's 2009. I was just not feeling well whatsoever. So here I am, January 2011. I was in bad shape. I was getting, my doctors were talking about setting me up for an LVAD, an external pump for my heart. And as they were talking about that, the transplant coordinator comes to my office. She's got tears in her eyes. And she says, Derek, we think we found your new heart. Do you still want to go through with it? And, there was a point in time when I thought, well, maybe there's going to be this miracle that makes it so I won't need a heart transplant. Because that's, taking out the engine and putting a new one in is a scary thought when you're in that scenario. But when she asked me at that point, I said, yeah, let's do it. I've got no other choice. So it was an amazing experience. And here you see me. I was transplanted January 3rd, 2011. This is a few days after. And I knew immediately. It was like plugging in fresh batteries into an old dead remote. I woke up from my heart transplant surgery on the 4th, and I heard this thudding that I just didn't realize what was going on. And then I realized it was my new heart. And it was a powerful experience. And I knew that I wanted to find a way to give back and to honor my donor and all the organizations that helped me stay alive for the previous decade of issues. So here I am in March 2011. I had gone from 200 pounds before my transplant. Here I have probably 5 different layers on just to have some mass. I completely atrophied. I went down to about 128 pounds, lost all my muscle mass, and literally started crawling from one side of my bedroom to the other to start training. I didn't know for what, but I started training, and I knew that I was going to do everything I could to be a little bit better every day to honor that person, that donor that saved my life. So, it was 8 months post-transplant that I ran my first 5K run, and that was September 2011. And I knew at that point that it wasn't going to be enough. So 2 months later, I ran in my first half marathon. And I know Nathan was kind enough to rattle off a list of things that we've kind of left behind now, because things have gotten a lot crazier. But along the way, in April 2012, I competed in my first Olympic distance triathlon. So for those who don't know, it's a 0.93 mile swim, a 25-mile bike ride, followed up by a 6.2-mile run. And there I am finishing my first Olympic distance try. And at that point, I started talking to a bunch of other heart transplant recipients on Facebook. And we started developing something called Tin Men Endurance Racing. It was a group that we started, all heart transplants. Doesn't have to be triathlon related, but we wanted to do walks, runs, biking events, swimming events, you name it. We wanted to celebrate our second chances, honor our donors, and just show people what is possible to do post-transplant. So it was April, so April to May, 1 month later, I competed in my first half Ironman. So 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike ride, and a 13.1 mile run. And then, of course, the transplant games. It was there were a couple just life-altering events in my history here, and this was definitely one of them. Meeting people like me, meeting the transplant recipients, meeting the donor families. And it's just such a special event. I'm sure a lot of you have gone, but if you haven't gone, Houston coming up, it's going to be huge. It's such an amazing event. I can't even describe it, but the feeling of family, of camaraderie, of mutual understanding. I went out in the pool for the first time. I'd never even been to a swim meet before, and but I'd been swimming and training for the Ironman and stuff, and I would ask other swimmers, Dad, like, oh, I'm supposed to do a medley here. What's this all about? And they'd look at my chest and they'd go, "You're a transplant, right? You're a heart transplant." And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Just follow your heart." So I don't know how much I followed my heart, but I followed the other transplants and ended up winning 7 medals at the games, and it was just an amazing experience. November 2012, I went back and to the site of where I finished my first half marathon and completed my first full marathon in the Philly Marathon here in town. This is a little off here, but 2011 I competed in 2 endurance events. 2012 I upped that to 17 endurance events. 2013 I did 23 different endurance events. Cycle rides, triathlons, marathons, you name it. Like I tell people, I didn't go through cancer and a heart transplant to sit on my butt all day. So, you know, my donor gave me life, and I'm doing everything I can to take care of this heart, to be a good custodian, and to honor this person's memory. I wrote a letter 6 months out. I still haven't heard back, so I don't know anything about my donor, but I do know that they chose to save my life on the last day of theirs. That speaks to character, and that's enough for me at this point to realize what they gave to me. So July of 2013, I knew that the half Ironman wasn't going to be enough. So I did become the first cancer survivor / heart transplant recipient to finish a full distance Ironman. And the stats on that one is a 2.4 mile swim. Get out of the water, you do a 112-mile bike ride. You follow that with a 26.2-mile run. If you don't finish by midnight, you start at 7 in the morning. If you don't finish by midnight or 17 hours later, it doesn't count. 17 hours and 1 second doesn't matter. It doesn't. So I finished this as a member of the 10 men endurance iron team, and I felt so good after doing that one in Lake Placid, New York, which is a lot of hills. I went back for another one in November, and I did that in Arizona. So, of all of these things, nothing compares to this right here. So, this is, you know, I keep having these amazing events in my life, and it's all due to what you guys do, and I want to thank you for that. And every event becomes the next largest event that I've ever been through or experienced, and I think, well, this is what it was all about. And then the next event happens, and I say, no, this is what it's all about. And now, 6 days ago, Emma was born, and she's what it's all about. Thank you. 4 minutes. If this will play, I'd like to show you really briefly. I hope this plays. If not, it's not that big a deal. But the 10 men endurance racing, I was the first one to finish in Lake Placid, but in this past November in Arizona, it was 5 heart transplants competing together in Ironman, Arizona. Never happened before. I'm going to give this a shot and see if it'll play.
Cool.